Hello. I'm going to be showing you how to port Tarkov models to Anomaly using Tarkin Item Exporter for SPT 3.11.4. The first thing you would need is an actual live Tarkov setup. Simply download the latest Tarkov, copy all of its contents into a new folder called SPT. In the description, there will be a downgrader tutorial guide. You simply download the patcher.exe, drag it in here, click the exe, let it downgrade Tarkov, and then using the SPT 3.11.4 files to then set it up, and then clicking the server.exe to allow it to set up to 3.11.4, and then downloading Tarkin Item Exporter, dragging it to BepInX. You should have this new folder right here. So every time you click inspect on anything in game, there will be a new tag called export as GOTF, and that essentially allows you to export it as a GOTF item, which then can be used to go into Blender, which will allow us to port the entire weapon very easily, and we could get working on a working, functional, fully kitted out gun in seconds. So I'm going to choose a gun I want to do this tutorial on, and I'll be back. You got your build all done. I'm going to actually be doing this tutorial based with the MP5. All you have to do is export as GOTF. What I also recommend doing is grabbing the bullet that it uses separately. So this is a 9 by 19. So if we just type in 9 by 19, we just pick one of these bullets. So I'm going to say, yeah, that looks fine. I'm fine with that. All we've got to do is just export that. And we're done. And then we can Alt F4 out of Tarkov and then get started. So I'm going to close out of this, close out of that. There we go. Go to Documents, Escape from Tarkov, GOTF. So this is our GOTF. And it looks like everything is pretty good. Actually, I wouldn't recommend deleting anything just yet. Like bringing it to my desktop first. We're now going to open Blender. At this step, you should already know how Blender works, and using the correct Blender version to use X-Ray Engine add-on, or the X-Ray add-on for Blender. So once this loads, there we go. We can delete all that. We can go to File, Import GOTF, and then we can get both those imported together. We might as well just do them both at the same time. It's going to take a bit to load in. And we're not going to do anything from this point because we don't know exactly how everything is formatted right now. But what I do recommend is pretty much just exporting this as an object. So this would be named P5 EFT. We delete all that. We're going to import object, find this, and now that we put that little bullet right there, it has joined it with it. So what I recommend doing is you can left click on one item and doing shift left click again. You can pretty much take them all, right clicking, doing X global and Y global. This now has it faced correctly for when we get our OGF. What I recommend next is probably with the the bullet, lining it in the magazine for now, because we will be using this a bit later. But right now, it should be fine right there, just for the time being. So actually, seems like we can conjoin everything. We hit Control J. We can actually just give this a weapon body and give it an armature and simply drag it on. Hit export once, reassign the weapon body, and we're going to delete this one, weapon EOT MP5 HUD.ogf. And for the operator presets, we need to change it to CS/COP. And we are export motions, disable, disable, disable. It should be exactly like that. Export OGF. Once we export the OGF, we can delete it, import it, and now we should have this EOT MP5. And now it should, hopefully, for every single gun that you do, it should align all the parts together that are texture wise instead of, textures. So if I was to give this one of the PNGs, let's say this is the receiver. I think this is the receiver. We were to go here and check it out. The rest of it, obviously these don't have texture paths yet, but it looks like all this is actually correct. So that should be the easiest way to get your gun set up rather than the actual way that I did it. So I'm going to be editing the video to definitely add this part instead of the next part. So what we're going to do is look at the bones. And this one is named magazine. This one is named, obviously, since they're all combined, you could do buy loose parts to get certain parts off from each other. And that can allow you to assign certain bones to certain places. So looks like that's fine for now. We'll probably mess with it a bit later. The ZAT4 and the KNTL. So this should be considered the KNTL, I believe. And this is considered the ZAT4 right here, which is also considered the bolt. So ZAT4. And we can also check, I kind of like renaming them to check, okay, is there anything else that I'm missing? So it looks like that also combines with the ZAT4, which is right here. And when this pushes back, it should push back just like that. And it doesn't look like we're missing anything else. Delete that part right there. Let's check this out. Not sure if this part actually moves, but animation wise, I don't think it will actually even be seen. So that should be pretty fine. We will consider this the lock. Actually, this, yeah, I believe this is considered the lock. I believe so. We will see later down the line. We will. Lock, and the bullets will be considered that bullet we got right there. So bullets right there. Silencer is always going to be named weapon underscore silencer. Sometimes this bone isn't used, and if you want a reference, I kind of recommend putting in the actual one that you're referencing and seeing how they did it. So that's weapon silencer, and we can tell that this does not use the muzzle at all. This is considered weapon body, that's silencer. So we know there's a lock, magazine, bullets, trigger, zap for it, KNTL. And I believe I got everything correct based off of my the parts of the gun. So now what we can do is export it again. And it may do this sometimes. So if we need to, we can always reassign it by hitting tab to go into edit mode and reassigning the bone itself. Hitting export, and that should allow us to export it. So if we import it again, and we can bring in an OMF to check out the animation it uses. So let's get right here, animations. We're going to check the animations it uses. Go to timeline, hit enable. So this is what happens when it shoots. So it doesn't look like that's actually the zap for it, because I know this part actually doesn't move. So this is considered the zap for it. This is KMTL. So that's the KMTL. That shoots. We know that. We're going to check its unjam. So this is what happens when it unjams. It's nothing too crazy. Reload. Does look like that does reload correctly. Let's see. That may not need to fully move. I'm not entirely sure. This part may not have to move. So maybe we can name that weapon body. Let's just see. Because we know this clicks. I don't know. It kind of looks odd when it moves. Let's check how that moves. It does move out of it. So I guess we're just let's do it like this. We could say, if we really, really wanted to, we could say that this also moves, I believe. No, that would definitely not move. We do not want that moving. So that definitely doesn't move. I was thinking that these parts would move with it, but that may not be something that happens. Okay, so it definitely isn't. Okay, so it looks like we got pretty much everything for this animation. It doesn't look too bad. That would be the animation for that. Go back, and it actually doesn't fit, as you can tell, with how far it pulls because of how the animation works. So what we maybe could do is maybe like this. And it looks like it still does pretty much fit it. So I mean, it doesn't look bad itself. Could also align this just a bit. So let's see how this looks. That may not be something that you really care about, but if you do, maybe something to look into. You know, just messing with a little bit of stuff here and there. But I think it looks pretty fine, all things considered. I don't think it looks too crazy. Since we're probably not going to be seeing the bullet when it goes, yeah, when it goes out of the mag. And once it goes in, it obviously goes in just like that. So that animation looks fine. And I don't think we're going to be seeing the bullets from, well, we might. We'll be safe. I'm going to make it a second one, a second one. And to give it the armature bullets. And we're simply going to move it just a little bit, just so it fits a bit under the next blow. And then maybe just as an even more precaution, we could give it a third bullet that slides right under the second bullet. And then we can see if these align good when it goes empty. So when it's empty, it still looks like you can see the bullet right there. So move it just a little bit. You can also see the tip right there. That we need to move it like this. There we go. And it looks like it fits quite well. So there's our 3 bullets. Now fitted into the magazine. Boom, and then boom. It looks like that is a fine animation. So we are now done with our animation. We're now done with the porting process for now. And if we bring it back in, we can tell that these all have units. I actually don't think should be this many. I believe there is some stuff I forgot to combine again. So let's see. As we can tell, these should be combined too. Should all be. I think these should all be combined. I think I forgot to combine all the body itself. So let's combine this all together. And then that looks quite well. We're going to combine the bullets together because we have aligned them correctly. Boom. That's the bolt, silencer, the body, the bullets, the muzzle, the mag, the handguard, the bolt rack, and then the stock. So I always like minimizing as many parts as I can, so when I'm doing the textures, they look fine. You can always go to OGF HUD, load in the HUD that you've edited, and for the shader names, I always like doing model/model. I believe that is the name that it needs. So model/model. I believe that's the name. Let's see. Actually, these may be named a model. Yeah, model/model. That's what I like using at least. So what we will be doing is for the image texture, we're going to be giving it an actual path. So what we can always do is figure out, okay, what actual PNG does this go to before actually making them into DDS. So let's say this is part of the body. So let's do that. And we could tell this texture is fine. So we could tell, all right, that is the body. So we will make a path, weapon, EMP, MP5, and we, call it MP5 body. So that would be called the MP5 body. I know this is the stock. This is also considered the body, it seems. So we're also going to name this body. And then we can figure out what texture this one goes to. Sure, might hit that. Char channel. Yep, that's the char channel. So we can name that, CH for char channel for short. We know this is the handguard. So we went to handguard right here. We could do it just like this. Boom, that's a handguard. And I always like to name them not the exact same as I would with a Tarkov name because the Tarkov names are really long. And this would be considered the muzzle, so I'm just going to call it N for muzzle. Then these are the bullets, so I'm just going to call that MP5 bullet. This is I believe, the receiver, but we can always check again, see how it is. So that PNG does look fine. So we can name this R for receiver. 9 is the sight. So I'm just going to name that sight rear. That is the silencer. So I'm just going to call that side. And then this is, I believe, the bolt. You can see if it actually has a bolt. If it doesn't, we can always check which one it would go to. But I'm thinking it actually goes to the body. I believe so. Yep, that does look correct. This will be considered the body. We're going to hit Control S to save it. We have our texture set up for the game. Now, probably the most important part about all this is right here. So we can delete all of this since we have everything set up. And I do not like using the specklers, so I'm not going to be using the specklers for this. Instead, I like using the roughness gloss. So we can remove that, remove all these. We're going to keep our HUD right there. So now, to make a HUD, all we need is these 3 parts. Or not make a HUD, but make a texture setup. Since this is the char channel, I'm just going to call it MP5 char channel. And for every normal, it's going to be called the name that you made for the texture itself, underscore bump. This is the gloss, so I'm going to name it something like this so I can get it together. We are now going to open our Photoshop, and there's going to be a download for this Tarkov texture editing.atn, which is an action, setup preset that I use for my guns. So once my Photoshop actually loads, we can drag these 3 in, drag them in. There we go. All 3 are in. And you'd simply click on this. And if you have your actions enabled in the window, it should say, I think, actions something. Yeah, right there, actions. I missed it. But you want to have this one. But what I like to do is take out the hues. So it takes out that kind of bluish tint to it. Because if not, all Tarkov guns have a blue tint. It's just something I like to do personally. And then you can use this gloss making to set up the gloss. And then from the gloss, you combine that with the bump. And now we have our bump made. And you need the NVIDIA Texture Tools Exporter, which will also be in the description. And you can load the preset, which is bump making Tarkov textures. However, if you want to, you can make it a BC3 interpolated, which allows it for every DX version, like DX8, 9, 10, 11. Generating mint maps is enabled. Color map, filter type is Kaiser, and the compression effect will be highest. And you can simply save that. And so once we save that, it should be pretty good. And again, you can always revert it as well if anything, changes. But that is how the bumps are made with the gloss. And for the normal texture, this is all up to artistic, perspective. If you want to keep the blue tint, you can. If you want to change the colors, you can. If you want to make it brighter with leveling, you can. This Tarkov diff making is mainly for when textures are hollow or they do not exactly look entirely flat. Say a PNG, you put in a PNG from Tarkov and it's not flat like this, the diff maker will force it to be flat and it will, instead of being transparent, it will make it full color. But with this one, I'm fine with how it looks. I'm just gonna hit save with that as well. And now we have our bump and our CH made. We can delete that. And that is our first texture made. So if we want to, we can always use the original animation, config setup and textures and folders and everything made for this. Now I'm not going to use any of these scripts, sounds used obviously for the gun itself, reloading, stuff like that. Textures, instead of using all these textures, I'm not using those. Instead, we have our own textures. So we would make a path that we set in our HUD and put in the textures one by one. What we need next is THMs. And to open THM, we will need the X-ray toolset. Going to THM viewer. And from here, I'm just going to grab a THM that I prefer to use. I always use one in my guns. So let's say I'm just going to copy this in the bump. We're going to name this to MP5CH and MP5CH bump. We're going to copy this path into our THM viewer, hit all, select the actual diff color, name the bump map to the bump map name that we have in it, which is this bump right here. So you name that exactly like that, hit OK. You can always go back to it, go to validator, take all of these, put in your path, execute, and it will resync all the THMs to be correct. So you don't have to go around messing with all the texture setups. And this is how a texture will look. So if we were to import our gun again and say we want to fast put on textures, we're going to go to external data, find missing files, go to that path that we set up, which is right here, find missing files, and it now is on the charging cable. So now we can tell this is the charging cable. If we want to make it even better, to actually put in the bump, we can use this auto load bump map. We can click it on scripting, hit play, go back to layout, and this is what it's going to look like when the bump is on it. So this is how it looks with the bump. And it doesn't look too bad since this is BC3. There is a bit of, a bit of graininess to it. But if you want to, you can always export it in BC7, which only allows DX11 to be used. However, it does look the best quality-wise. Now that you've got that done, I'm going to come back and finish all my textures, and I will see you then. Next thing we do is pretty much setting up everything folder-wise. So what I like to do is take one of my guns that I made previously and pretty much just dragging all the configs, the scripts, and setup for all these. So like the text, plugins, magazines. So this text allows you to have the XML, which I just kind of put like for the description. MP5 is cool. Name is HK MP5. Has to be named. I usually name it the gun's name itself. And I only have English, but if you do know Russian, you can put RUS. Do the same with this XML, but Russian. Plugins, this is for recoil effects. I just always put the name of your custom gun, and make both enhanced recoil or recoil setup. This is for magazine setup. So this EFT MP5 that I'm making will go right to the weapon MP5 in game. I like to also give it mod parts. This is for WPO patch, EFT MP5. I simply search up the parts for the MP5 and copy and paste them. NPC underscore loadouts is what allows NPCs to actually hold the new gun that you're making. So I always just kind of do whatever I kind of want here. So like this seems pretty fine. And I'll just paste them like this. And usually if your gun is just a W underscore, say W underscore MP5.otx, I like to make mine into a DLTX format so it doesn't conflict with anything. So I simply named the MP5 file mod system underscore ZZZ underscore EFT MP5. So all the weapon MP5s that's going to be changed right here is simply I'm just going to highlight them all with Notepad, replace with EFT MP5. The parent section is now named MP5 EFT, which this allows it to exist with other weapons. I'm going to name all this just like this, description, and then I always like making my visual world underscore world.ogf. That's just how I am. Maybe a little silly, but it's just what I like to do. These are the sounds, so this is where the sounds will be coming from, which I'm not going to mess with those right now. And these are the animations that's going to use. I'm not going to mess with the animations right now either. And that is how you will start your setup. And I also like to make the script for weapon cover tilt. I'll always put, my new gun with weapon cover tilt. And then that is how your folder should be set up for now. And I will see you once I finish setting up some other things. Since I got everything named, like texture wise, and have my OGF, I'm going to now make the world OGF. So I like deleting the bullets and deleting parts of a gun that aren't going to be really seen within the gun itself. And I always like to conjoin everything besides the silencer. So we're going to conjoin all these parts with Control J. And we are going to go right here, the weapons, shape type, right here on the bone will be named box. Edit the shape. This is the shape that's going to be in. Apply that shape. Make sure the joint type is rigid. The mass is 10. And I've heard that, bones can make some lag. So what I always like to do is edit the bones, deleting everything but what I need. So since I'm only using the silencer and renaming all these to just use weapon body, those are the only two bones I'm going to be using. And I'm going to also be decimating them. I always like to use 0.3 with decimation. This pretty much lowers the poly count. So when NPCs are holding it, it won't create lag. This is kind of an extra just to be safe. And I also like renaming it to world so I don't accidentally ruin my actual HUD. So once you're done with that, with the world HUD, you don't actually have to path it with a motion reference. So you can delete that motion reference and save. And also, if you want to, you can rename the HUD animation and the HUD hand animations, and it doesn't actually ruin the animations itself. You don't have to change them in the LTX. So I named this one to EFT MP5. If you do change them, make sure your motion reference also corresponds to what you named it. So now this is correct. This is the path for the actual animation itself. We can see that there's 10 bones. The bones are correct. All the textures are correct. So now our MP5 now has a working OGF. And if you're ever worried, you can always go back here, edit it again, apply shape, and just mess around with it. But that is how your world is made. And after that, I'm going to then place this HUD right here. So now our HUD is complete, our textures are complete, our dynamics is complete, all of our setup for folders, our patches are all complete. And now, since there's not going to be I'm not going to be doing any scope setups. I also have a 3DS setup as well, and PRS setup guides. I'm not going to be showing you here, but this seems pretty good to start with. So we're going to see in game and check it out. Hello. So I'm going to show you how I make my icons. So for icons, we're going to open up a Blender. We're going to keep the light in the box, and when the default Blender sets up, we're going to remove the cube. We're going to port in our gun, bring our gun in. Here we go. And we're simply going to bring this super close. And first, we're actually going to align it. So, see right here. There. We're going to do it kind of like this. We're going to change it the perspective to orthographic. We're going to make that orthographic scale a little bit lower. And we can always click this to make it just a little bit lower. And we're going to fit in the gun doing so. That seems about pretty good. I don't really mess with any of these. I don't mess with like depth of field or anything like that. But I do put a world color setup, an image texture open, and I like to use HDR, just a random HDR. Um, this gives the gun just a little bit of when making. I also like sometimes using ambient occlusion and SSR, but you don't have to. But I guess it really depends how you want yours to look. Go to film and always choose transparent. And we're simply just going to put our gun's textures in. So find missing files, go to the texture path that we got set up, choose that. This is how our gun's looking right now. Going to go to scripts, bring in that auto load bumper, hit layout, and now our gun is going to look a little bit different. Obviously, we're not going to put the silencer there. And we're going to bring the light, I'm going to get out of here. We're going to bring the light a little bit down. If I can find that light. There we go. Just a little bit. And for the camera, you can always mess with these as well. I don't mess with them too much. I think this is how they set up, but I kind of forget entirely how things are made. But there isn't much effect going on with like ambient occlusion and stuff like that. But it may be something you want to use. I mean, if you do, definitely go for it. Um, it's really a matter of how you want things to be handled. So I think this is actually how you add. Well, let's see. To be honest, I forget how things handle. No, that's definitely not what we want to do. No, yeah, we'll definitely remove that. But after that, after you got everything set up, you got the way you want it to look, you can hit it 12. And since we had that fill in transparent, we'll bring the Well, that's definitely something, ain't it? Ah, so this is how it actually looks. Okay. That light is way too close. Holy crap. Alright. Gonna bring that away a little bit. Gonna bring this light just a little bit down. There we go. Um, and sometimes I also like messing with the actual textures themselves. So I will always conjoin them all together and mess with the world textures. So you can always click one texture at a time. And sometimes I like messing with the roughness and the metallic look. But let's just say I didn't do that. Let's just say I was really happy with how this looks. So let's say I just saved that. I'm in P5. And if you ever want to make a upgrade icon as well, you can also make a upgrade icon too. I always recommend making it a little bigger, which we're actually going to redo our what's it called, original, to make it taller or make it more huge. So we're gonna hit this. Make it more huge. There we go. And let's say I'm perfectly fine with this. So if we do that, we can safely close out of that. So now we have our original MP5 texture for the icons made, and we will go to textures in the game data, make a UI, and we are going to go to Photoshop, make a new 512 by 512. This is how mine's set up. Background is transparent. You want to create, go to view, new guide layout, custom, do 10 number, 10 by 10, 50 by 50. Click OK. And we're simply going to drag these two in. Say I'm really happy about how that looks, but let's say I wanted it to be just a little darker. Let's say I want it to look like that. We're simply going to click right here to just copy the gun itself. Going to hit Control V to put it in. Obviously, we don't want the gun to be super huge. So, in in theory, if I remember correctly, Lunatic also tells the guide on this as well, how to figure out the numberings on them. And I believe this is 1, 2, 3, 4. This would be 4 by 2 because it's 2 squared. So this would be 4 by 2. So that's 4 by 2. And then the upgrade is a little bit different. The upgrade can take a little bit more space since it's going to be a little bit of a bigger picture. But I kind of like using the same setup. So it's kind of like the exact same. So the upgrade uses a different XML setup, stuff like that. And if you want to, you can add some, edits to it, maybe like a stroke, like a 1% stroke, maybe give it a little bit of this. There we go. And then all we're just gonna save it as a DDS file. Going to remove generate bitmaps. Hit save. Let's say I'm really happy how that turns out. We're done with all that. I'm gonna name this EMP5UI. Hit that in here, and now we can use this SIE Stalker icon editor. Go to DDS, drag that in, and now if we drag it like this, go to Options, Information on the Position, we can copy all this, go to Configs, go right here, and make new icons. So our icon would be like this now. And if we were to look at one of my other guns, this has an icon's texture path. So we would put the texture path for the MP5 right there. So that's for that. And for the upgrade path, we can use, I think I made one for this one. There we go. Upgrade icon path right there. Upgrade icon path. And for this one, you will go to your upgrade, hit information on position to XML, and the X right here is 0, Y is 100, width is 200, and the height is 100. So this first one, 0, 100, width is 200, the height is 200. So now, that is how we set it up. And if you were to make icons and stuff, you can put in bass icons, any kind of icons. Use your original calculator, put that as the trunk. Say I wanted to have this scope, and you can align this scope like this. You add-ons manager, it will tell you the X and Y. And if you make scopes, there's always going to be, for example, an X and Y for the icon position and icon layer right here. So that layer X would be 70 and then -9. And that is how textures would work for making icons. So now you got your icons, everything's done. We're going to save that, and now we are officially going to check it out in game. All right. Once we are in game, we can find the gun we have. Which this is the SMG. And we'll bring its mags. And we can test it out. So we can tell that the board mono is working. I'm going to lower its setup. I'm going to change this. Let's say 12. It's going to get some good. There we go. That's pretty good. Let's check those animations. Animations look fine. If you ever want to, you can do time factor 0.5 to like really check the animation. Just seeing if everything's okay. But that looks fine. Looks like the hand's kind of clipping just a little bit. That doesn't look too bad. And then we can set up the aim sight for it with aim position and aim orientation. That honestly looks pretty fine. We could probably change the lower position just a bit. It has to be that close to us. But that doesn't look too bad. No, I'm going to keep it like this. So this is how I got it. There we go. And this would be our Tarkov, MP5. We're going to switch to third person. We're going to go to threat and align it according to the best we can. Sadly, you can't really change how NPCs hold guns. They kind of all hold guns like they're kind of stupid. and that is something that's a bummer. But let's say I was really happy with that, and then you would want to go to your strap orientation and mess with it however you want. Obviously, you don't want it floating on the person on the NPC when you see it. So that would be good. That would be considered good. We're gonna do fire. See how it looks when it's fired. And this is what will happen when it's fired. Obviously, you can tell the fire point is not exactly on it. So you can mess with this fire point and drag it just like that. No, it's just a little bit better. Same with the shell point. You can mess with the shell point a little bit to make it align just a little better. But let's just say I was fine with that, just like right there. You would hit apply, and in our MP5 reanimation, we could go back to our config right here. We're gonna keep this config open, close all other tabs. Go to our game data and anomaly, go to cache underscore debug, and now we have our MP5 set up. So this is all the things I actually changed. So I changed all the aim HUD position. So all we would have to do is just put in the new values we did. We changed the hand orientation. There we go. Hand orientation, hand positioning. We did change item position, so we're going to change just that. And we changed all the lower HUD positions. And Control S to save it. And we also changed pretty much everything from here. So we could simply place in the, I guess you could just drag it all in there and copy it, go back up here, and paste it all if you really want to. But what I recommend doing is just doing it how it kind of looks right here. So like position, orientation, fire point 2 and fire point go right here. It's the shell point is right here. And then the strap position and orientation is right now. And that would be considered a successful port. Um, that's about all to this guide. I think I've covered every basis. I've covered icons, how to port the gun itself, stuff like that. So if you enjoyed this and if it helped, that's good. Leave a like, I guess. But I'll see you.